Hey there guys, welcome to another Getting Personal. I wanted to do an update on the ADD. I wanted to do a sense of kind of where I'm at with that, what I'm thinking about it. And I want to, once you realize you're ADD in that sense that, yeah, your brain functions differently, you're looking at, well, what can you do for it? And so what I've decided is that I'm going to just self-manage it, which I have been my whole life. But now, once you realize it, so things start to open up to you. A lot of things open up in the sense that, you think, well, you guilt yourself where you shouldn't be guilting yourself that, hey, why really can't I just finish this damn thing? And what do I have to do to finish it? So I'm going to be like, this will just be talking about the sense of ADD management. And I think a lot of people have found ways to cope with it all naturally without even knowing that they do have it. But if you knew that you had it, and you found out, say you found out that you had it after like a long time of managing it and learning to just be, that's me. It's actually, you have even more clarity, because then once you have a resistance point in your life, for you, it feels so much more resistant, and so the guilt can come into play, and you're like, man, I'm just like, you suck at it. But just knowing that it can be it's a simple thing like dopamine deficiency in an area where if you push through, you'd get rewarded even more. So what I found for me personally, I have a lot of resistance to the point where another person will have resistance. But like my resistance is like resistance. It's like you've got a reinforced wall and it's bricked up, and then on top of it, it's got bars on it, and you're like trying to break those bars down. So with that, once you start training yourself through that point, the resistance becomes more understandable. So then the guilt doesn't kick in, which then the guilt will hold you back, and then you would have even less motivation to push through an event or being certain focus on something. Or so understanding and managing your ADD. This is something that I want to talk about, and starting from just off my head, is that I talked about this before, is having a list, but really having a list, like have a list that's detailed, not wish-washy stuff you actually have to do, and maybe even time the things that you need to do, because with ADD, you don't have a sense of time. Time can slip past you very easily, and even normally, as a normal human being, that can happen too. But if you have that, you're doubling down on like, yeah, time's gonna slip, but then it's really gonna slip for you. I always used to say this, I have no sense of time, and other people would be on time for things, and I learned to manage that one because I was always late for stuff, and I was like, why am I always late? Let me just start being really early to things, and that's how you can manage that. But naturally for you, things are just, they're a little bit harder, but what happens in the exchange of that, you become so much more diligent with stuff. You become so much more focused. So say if you were to have a list and then you time it, you're like, holy crap, like I really have to get that done. And so your focus is intense, where another person's in focus is just being pretty, focused, and they can get it done. But you have intense focus. So it's like, you have almost a superpower over that person to the point that you can't rip yourself away from it. So either what's happening is that you're functioning like this, it's like boom, 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 like that, instead of like people kind of pulse throughout the day for their interests and things like that. So like when you go on a task, you're like boom, but then say if you've been doing it for years, that like initial inertia to have a lot of focus. I know with me doing the work that it oftentimes, you feel like I've been doing this for a long time, because you have, and to keep your interest, you need to manage certain techniques to keep your interest. So setting a timer, have a to-do list that is detailed, really detailed, and don't pile too much on top of that, on top of it. And know once you're coming up and you've set a timer and you're doing the to-do list, don't don't get caught up in the anxiety of thinking I'm going to suck at this or I can't do it, because your brain is at a, as if you're at the start line, the line's here. Like your brain naturally, for me anyway, I feel like I'm all the way back here. I'm like, why am I back here? I'm already at the start line. So you're all the way back. So then that resistance point, you're like creeping up, and then sometimes you're like, man, I feel really anxious. Say if I'm going to work on something that I've never done before, I'll get more anxious than normal. And just understanding that, having that understanding is that, okay, I'm way more anxious than it should be. So then you just pretty much cancel that out. You just go, well, that's just a dopamine deficiency, whatever. And so you ignore it. And so what happens is, I'm finding that when I just work through it, like the really anxious resistance, and inside of you, it can feel so much more than it should, and you can be like so unreasonable with it. And then what happens is, then you get excited. You get more excited than other people to work on stuff, and that energy is contagious, and people will see that in you. So it's a good thing, and you have to understand that for you, people don't understand that you are having to go through that, and so you have to go through it all yourself. That don't act on whinging or complaining like this is gonna suck or whatever. Just don't even act on those emotional impulses. Just don't. Just leave them alone. Just understand that they are simply just thoughts, that because you have a condition that you're gonna work through it, and it will get easier and easier the more you do it, to the point that you know how you function. And once you know how you function, you will function so much better. And that's like, it's a gift to yourself, essentially. Like, you finally be able to understand yourself. And I think a lot of people go through their life not understanding themselves and not realizing that you can sit down and focus. Like, it's not a thing that you can't, but you have to do it in a different way. You're not built like everyone else. That sometimes some people just, like, for me, if I want to watch a movie or something like that, I'm like all the time, like, I can't even focus on the movie. So then what I have to do is I really got to put myself in a place where it's immersive. I got to like really intently focus and put my mindset into like getting into it and relaxing and making sure everything else in my life is kind of like out of the way, and sit down and then get immersed in it. And you can get into it. You can get into these things, but once you get into them, you get stuck into those things, which is not a bad thing. But then you should know, well, I need to pull myself away. I really need to pull myself away. I think but we naturally all have these things where we do get stuck. We're all very much similar, but I know with me, I would really, really just grind in and get stuck. So, and this is where I think a lot of art that you see with people, and you go, holy crap, they're obsessive. Yeah, they're obsessive. They're different. They're functioning at a different level. And you're like, I can never reach that level. Maybe you can't reach it on the same level, but maybe you don't want to be obsessive. Trust me, it's not a good thing to be obsessive. I would say, like, each to their own, and everyone is different. While that person can sit and do this super obsessive thing because of the way their brain functions, and they just get stuck into something, you don't necessarily want to be like that. So, but then on top of it, it's like, it's just managing these emotions, and everyone's going to go through it. But for me, just noticing things are going to be a lot harder is just relieving for once. It's just like, oh, like, okay, I just expect it to feel a lot harder, a lot harder, and then it's just normalized. And then you get better and better each time that you do it, and to the point you're gonna be just, I wouldn't say you're gonna be, because no one's really normal. Everyone's kind of like so unique and different, and it sucks to even label it as something like ADD, because it doesn't even make sense. It's just a normal function for who you are as an individual. You're a different person. Like, you can imagine you'd be a way better person at doing a certain job, 1,000 years ago, but today, sitting at a computer, you're not suited for that. So, and a lot of people do find their occupations, when they do have that form with their ADHD, they gravitate naturally towards a job where it would complement them, and they would use that type of personality trait to work in certain fields. So don't look at it as good or bad, but just manage it. Manage the upside and the downside of like, hey, I'm gonna maybe get more depressed than I should normally get. Then don't fucking get so depressed. Really, like, don't dwell on it. Get the emotion, get the thoughts out, and realize like your highs and lows might be more intense, but you don't need to act on them. And the quicker you start doing that, I believe you can change the function of your brain. You really can. And I really thought about, you know, seeking medication for it, but I don't think it's good. It's the easy way out, right? And it will mess you up long term. It's like putting a Band-Aid on something, right? You put a Band-Aid on it, it's gonna, like, you need the Band-Aid, it's like keeping it on there, and you need to eventually take it off. So, but the thing is, why bother? Why bother doing it? Just live with it and then work out what it is. Once you know, like, you have this kind of, it's almost like a framework. It's like a blueprint. You've figured out something, and you're like, well, I've got the blueprint to how I feel and do things and react to things. Hey, you're gonna get more angry over a situation that's just ludicrous versus someone else. Like, they would be able to take it. And so you just understand that. It's like, hey, like, okay, well, let me just not act on it. And it will work. It's already working for me. So that's something that just don't, and I think we're extra harsh on ourselves. We're really harsh on ourselves. Because people with ADHD, they have like these self-esteem issues because their dopamine isn't, like, if you have no dopamine, you're going to have self-esteem issues. You're going to be like, have a bunch of crap that's just, it's just because it's neurochemically, you're not quite there. And then no one's taught you early on to manage it. And so you've gone your whole life thinking you're one thing, and then you've having self-negative talk towards yourself. You're gonna come out of this like, what the hell I've been doing? It's like, it's not even real. It's just a way I have to like talk to myself to then get me out of it. And a lot of people actually don't have, so like some people can be just depressed and nothing actually be wrong with them, but they just have a lot of negative self-talk, which they've made themselves depressed. And labeling these things is just, it's a bad thing. Like, don't label it. But we live in a culture where we have labeled it, and the only way I can actually talk to you about it is to label it on a video saying ADHD, and then, oh, I'll watch that. But the thing is, you're just a different functioning person in society. That's all. That's really it. And you have to manage your personality trait versus another personality trait. And so to you, you're not built for school and the way school is set up. You're not in that minority of people. And unfortunate, it sucks. Like, going to school with ADHD, you're not necessarily the best person to sit down and sit still and pay attention to something. But school isn't really a good thing. It's garbage. Like, it's sit down at a table, don't move, and listen. Like, we don't do things like that. It's very hard to do it a long period of time. So, but some people can do it, but you're going to be that person at school acting out, being fidgety and wanting to move around, and you can't focus. And the way people teach you is that if they don't understand your personality, which we're just like, I hate to say it, like, we put people in that cookie cutter type of mentality, and it's like everyone fits into it. And a lot of teachers aren't adapting themselves to the student, and they're just like, it's almost like a cut and paste, let me do it. And then we'll label you as something. And believe it or not, like, just don't, like, I don't even want to label it as something, but it's for me to understand it and then process it. And then it becomes me. Then I understand who I am. And there's just that crappy thing, like, we have to label it because people want to treat it. And let's be honest, you can make some money from treating things that not necessarily are the best things to treat, because I've heard pretty bad things. It can numb you, it can make you kind of like a bit like a robot if you were to treat your ADHD. And so I'm a really creative person, so why on earth would I want to damage that? Why would I want to take that away from me? That's so much value. That's an immense amount of value that I can offer the world. And if I take it away, to be like, hey, I can sit down for a really good period of time without having to try. Because if I took something, I wouldn't have to actually start trying anymore. It sounds weird, but I would just be like, hey, I can take this drug, and the drug will get me through. But then that's not a good thing. And then on top of it, you're gonna get side effects. and you're going to be so dependent on this drug for you to work that you're just in this weird situation of a person that is probably worse off in the long run, because let's be honest, like, it's probably going to be really hard to constantly manage that long term. And if you're damaging your brain and you're taking away your creativity, then you don't know who you are anymore. You fundamentally change yourself halfway through your life. And it's fair enough if you're early and you went on that stuff, maybe that's just you now, but you got to really rethink what you're going to do around it. And maybe you don't want to change who you are, because who you are is, it's awesome. It's what's got you here. You might have had some falls along the way, but I'm sure you can, once you understand who you are, you'll be able to pick yourself up and then get everything going. So, but yeah, I don't know what else to say about this, but with their ADHD ADHD management, which I don't even like saying anymore, just understand things will be harder for you. You'll get angry, you'll get stressed more, you might, I don't know if you get sad more. I don't really get sad much, but you're going to be more reactive to things, and just realize that where another person is more calm and collected, they have less impulsivity, they do, you could say you're doing less dumb things, but you have to realize, like, hey, yeah, that's a dumb thing, I'm not gonna, maybe I won't say that, right? That's an impulse thing, and just, you know, work on it. But these things are naturally things that people have to work on too anyway. But for you, it's a little bit higher than the next person, and that's fine. You'll work a way around it, and you'll live with it, and you'll make it your thing. You'll make it you, and just be you. At the end of the day, you got nothing else, so don't go and change it. If you change it, you're probably going to hate it. So I hope you guys get something out of this video, and until next time, guys, take care.